Broadcasting live from the IRSMedic studios, it's Parental Advisory. All right, well, thanks for tuning in to Parental Advisory. We're joined today by a special guest. Welcome, Karen Alpert, who lives and works in Australia. So even though it's dinner time here, Karen, you're just about past breakfast?
Yeah, it's 8 a.m.
Yes. All right. One of the topics that we talk about a lot here is expats, or those U.S. persons living and working overseas. It can be very frustrating and confusing. We know this because we have a lot of clients at the law firm that we help, especially thanks to the tax code, tax treaties, tax treatments. Karen has firsthand experience of this to the point that she actually renounced her U.S. citizenship, which we'll talk more about in a little bit. And thanks to her experience, Karen, how we found you was you started a website called fixthetaxtreaty.org and also a Facebook group. We'll talk more about that as well shortly. But first, Karen, I want to ask, some people don't understand how you end up living and working overseas. So, tell us a little bit of how you ended up going from the U.S. to Australia.
Okay. So my husband and I, born, raised in California. He's an academic. He had a job at University of Missouri, St. Louis, and decided it was time to look for a new one, and cast his net wide around the whole globe, basically, and found a job in Australia. And we thought, okay, well, we'll give Australia a try. And it was a temporary one-year job. We came down here and just loved Australia. It was safe, good place for kids, good education system, good healthcare system. We wanted to stay. So we looked around, and after the one-year temporary job was over, we found he found a permanent academic position where they were willing to sponsor him for permanent residency.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
When you start to realize, just how sort of screwy the tax treatment is, how many years did it take before you were like, wait a second?
Yeah. So when we first got to Australia, we were filing our taxes like normal and really we'll take the Australian numbers and translate them to a U.S. return and not worry about it. This was the 90s, right? Nobody was thinking anything else, really. And then late 90s, we became Australian citizens, and we're Australian citizens now. Doesn't that mean we're not U.S. citizens anymore? And we stopped filing our U.S. returns.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, that is true. In countries, if you become a citizen of that country, you lose the other one. It's gone.
Yeah, well, that's actually not the case in Australia. But so when all of the stuff in 2010, 2011, FATCA started coming around, we're going, okay, well, maybe we ought to resolve this. Are we still U.S. citizens or not? Mm-hmm. And in the process of doing that, we tried to relinquish our citizenship, and they said, no, you're still U.S. citizens.
We still want your money.
Yeah, and it took them 14 months to make that decision from the time we visited one consulate to put in all the paperwork to the time they gave us the actual decision. It took them 14 months.
Wow. And I'm assuming it was not an easy process.
That was not an easy or cheap process. Once we'd done that, as soon as we got the denial, that was actually late February, early March this year. Mm-hmm. So we got out quickly at that point. I don't think they made the right decision, but it wasn't worth fighting.
Right.
It was just cheaper to get out.
Making the decision to actually renounce your U.S. citizenship is a big deal. And I see it on these Facebook groups. We're in a lot of the expat groups, and, there's a lot of questions. People are struggling. They're scared.
And it's fearful. And then some people are sort of throwing some fear out there too. That doesn't really help.
A lot of
but
people
what did you
really
think of the actual process of renouncing? What was your experience like?
So the actual process. So the first thing was we wanted to make sure we had all our ducks in a row about our tax situation, right? Mm-hmm. So that took us a couple of months to figure out, go through Streamlined, get all of that done. But once we'd done, and that wasn't cheap either, because like I said, we thought we were Australian citizens. Therefore, we were investing like any other Australian citizen would invest. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is toxic when you come to the US. And so in the 5 years that we filed, we paid quite a bit, 5 figures plus in tax, and all of it on Australian source income.
Yeah, right. Nothing with the US,
Well, I mean, we had some US assets as well, but they were invested in mutual funds that had foreign income, not really US, not much US income, and or they were retirement accounts. So the US retirement accounts, of course, I didn't pay any US tax on because having access then, right? So we paid all this tax on Australian source income.
Wow. And you know what we find is really confusing for some people as well is, so say you're living and working in Australia as a U.S. citizen, and you find out you have to report all your foreign income. You're living in Australia. You don't consider that foreign income. It's your income.
Right. It's where you are. It's not
That's
really
right. It's where I live.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there were a couple years in that period where we had done what every financial advisor in Australia says to do: maximize your superannuation contributions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so and back in 2011, you could put $50,000 a piece into your superannuation.
So they can really grow huge. They can get really big. Anthony, I mean, it's nice. It's a good thing, but then when it comes to the tax treatment, it's really nasty.
Well, Anthony, do me a quick favor. Just give us a 1-minute dissertation on what a superannuation fund is.
Well, superannuation is a law in Australia that you have to take care of your own retirement. It's sort of mandatory 401k. And so your growth in there is growing tax-free, just like a 401k is. Now, this is where...
more or less tax-free.
And this is where it gets really obnoxious. Okay, if you had a superannuation, if such a thing existed in a country such as the UK, that has a nice treaty, they would say, "Oh yeah, that's a retirement account. It's only taxable on your distributions, so it wouldn't be a big issue." And the tax reporting on it is so much simpler and easier. But with the super, the IRS says, no. What we're going to treat this as a grantor trust, or maybe the employer's trust. Either way, the tax treatment, there's terrible and worse, and then the compliance work is just brutal to do. Luckily, if you're in Australia, this is the one bonus that you have, is with the streamlined foreign process, there's no penalty on the super amount.
Okay.
But if you are an Australian person working in the U.S., you've been here on a visa, or maybe you're a dual citizen, and you had your super back there, if you go through the streamlined domestic program, the IRS hits you with a 5% penalty on what your super value is. And if you are putting in $50 or $100 a year, this thing is getting big. And so you get whacked all around. And so much of it has to do with this treaty just being a piece of crap.
Karen. Now, I think it's really interesting, this website you have, fixthetaxtreaty.org. Very informative. And from what Anthony and I have seen, this is more informative and more organized than a lot of the websites out there, that businessmen are trying to put together. You've got a really awesome amount of information on there.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really one of the big goals. That's probably our biggest achievement so far, is getting the education side of it.
Yes.
And I'm an academic. This is what I do.
Yeah. Well, here's what I love. We do follow some of the expat groups, and people will voice a lot of frustration, but it's so nice when you see someone who's frustrated actually take action instead of sitting back and saying, "Woe is me, this is terrible." Hey, let's try to get this changed. Let's educate people. Let's make this known to the public on what exactly is happening.
Yeah, and in your case, the problem never really doesn't hit you anymore, but yet you're still motivated to solve it for all the other people that it can hit and surprise. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. How did you get knowledgeable about the treaty? I mean, just by being frustrated and learning?
So back in 2014, we actually probably a little earlier, but we contacted our local federal MP in Australia saying, "Look, you've got this FATCA IGA you're about to sign. Don't. And here's why we think it's wrong." And he sent a letter to the federal assistant treasurer who was in charge. And we get this letter back that basically says, oh, well, it's U.S. law. We have to comply. And, that's another country. What about sovereignty? And, oh, yeah, we know there's problems with the treaty, but, we have to wait till the U.S. wants to renegotiate the treaty.
Wow.
Like Australia has no ability to even just say, hey, this is a priority for us. So we found that infuriating. And we kept seeing that same exact language. There's the same person in the Australian Treasury who's responding to all these letters because they cut and paste exactly the same paragraph in every letter I've seen.
Yeah, I didn't realize that Australia has acknowledged, wow, this really stinks. This is not a good, but there's nothing they can do about it.
Well, what can we do? I mean, it's like you're asking us to approach the United States to negotiate a treaty. I mean, come on. How are we going to find them? Where can we possibly find wherever they could be? And I mean, you might start with a knock on the door. Oh, here you are. Here you are.
Exactly. I want to hear that Julie Bishop is going out there, our foreign minister, and telling the U.S. that this is a priority for us.
Yes.
Yeah. It's not going to happen overnight.
No.
I have no. I don't believe that if just because Australia says we want to negotiate, the U.S. is going to put everything down and negotiate. But I still think that we have the right to tell the U.S. government what we want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we can feel the frustration here. Like I said, we have clients that are dealing with the superannuation issue. And for a while, it was almost like no one knew how to even treat it. Like,
and still no one does. And that's one of the things that I'd really like to see happen sooner rather than later is I'd like to, and one of the things that I'm probably going to try and get people to write their federal MP here in Australia about is let's get the ATO and IRS together. There's a mutual agreement procedure under the treaty that says that the two competent authorities can talk to each other, which is nice that they can talk to each other. One of the biggest problems is the uncertainty.
Yeah.
You've got you ask 3 different tax people, U.S. tax experts, how to deal with the super, and you're going to get 10 answers.
Yep.
You could, and all of them could be correct.
And all of them could be correct.
And because the IRS gives a guidance, that they give their official guidance, and something that was found out by Dennis Prager, tax attorney in Los Angeles, who got a FOIA request on sort of how the IRS was treating the supers, and they come up with a whole secret rule of this is how we're going to treat it.
I saw that PDF that's been floating around with all of the correspondence between all the various IRS agents, and it's criminal. I mean, why don't we know? There's a treaty. Tell me how you're interpreting it.
Exactly.
Tell everybody how you're interpreting it, so everybody can do the right thing. And if we don't like the way you're interpreting it, then we can deal with that next time we negotiate the treaty.
Exactly. So, Karen, the Facebook page, actually, I think it's been growing pretty quickly. When I check on it, you're getting new members pretty regular.
Yeah, about 175 as of this morning.
I mean, I think when I contacted you a couple weeks ago, was it 70? That's some decent growth for an issue like this.
Yeah.
So on Facebook, it is Fix the Australia/US Tax Treaty page. So look that up because, I've been following it and people are really sharing some very good information.
You got to keep the pressure on, make this a priority. Yep. And I think it's one of the issues that so many, of our expats have around the world is trying to get some political lobby to get action. Americans abroad try to, but everyone needs to unite together to say, hey, this is really crazy what we're doing here. And it's really the issue is these compliance costs. And, unfortunately, some of the things that we have to charge clients, it's ridiculous for something that doesn't really generate a lot of income, or at least should have been deferred. It's nothing we really enjoy doing, but in order to do it right, they're just incredibly time consuming.
Well, right is a good question because nobody really knows what right is on a lot of these things.
Do it defensively. Yeah, do it
defensively.
Yeah, that's somewhat standard, right?
Now, Karen, you had said, you had to pay when you guys renounced, your husband and your daughter, you had to pay now the raised rate. It used to be a few $100, and now it's up to $2,350. Well,
before 2008, it was free.
Wow.
In 2008, they put in $450 fee for renouncing.
Yep.
And in 2014, they raised it to 2,350.
All right. Nice.
And in 2015, they also applied that to relinquishment applications. So until 2015, relinquishment applications were free as well.
Now, so you're talking then close to $10,000 to renounce, and you're saying how quickly will you make that back?
In 2 years.
In 2 years. That shows you how terrible the tax treatment is.
Yeah.
In 2 years, because I will now be on a level playing field. I can invest in the same things that my neighbors can invest in.
Mm-hmm.
I can use the same tax benefits that my neighbors can use.
Yep.
Yeah, and I would say the motivation for the U.S., to say, hey, we're not really interested in this, but this is the common thing I see. If you're a citizen over abroad, and so many times you're treated as a third world citizen.
Yeah.
People want to deal with you. And then the tax treatment, you're exactly right. You're at a disadvantage to your neighbors and everything.
That's right.
Because you have this whole thing. So you always need to find something with a better rate of return or just get used to less. So that's really, when you think about it, like how bad this is for everybody involved. And it really needs some attention to fix and get some fairness going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's your game plan, Karen, moving forward, and how can we help?
So moving forward, I think the biggest thing we need is education. And that's really what the website's about, is a place to educate people as to what the problems are. I've got, so the website's the big thing. We're in the process. I'm putting together a steering committee because I can't do this all myself, right? Mm-hmm. And at the moment, I've got 2 other people. One is coming on in January and one that's already in my steering committee. So that'll help us build up a strategy document, which we're working on. You can't really do that publicly. You've got to do all the, thinking about it, brainstorming, etc., in a smaller group. So I've got a steering committee put together, and there's information on the website about the steering committee. And if anybody's interested in helping, please do get on the website, send me an email. Be happy to talk to you about that. And then I've got a few short-term goals. One is to try and get certainty about the super treatment, like we were talking about, and try and get the competent authorities to talk to each other and tell us what to do so that we don't have to guess. I want to, the other thing, a recent blog post was about transparency. When an Australian bank sends information under FATCA to the Australia tax office, the account holder has no clue.
Wow.
So if I had an account in the U.S. and my bank sent information to the IRS, I'd get a 1099 that told me what that information was that went to the IRS, right?
Right.
I don't get an equivalent document if my Australian bank has identified me as a U.S. person. Now, they've probably asked me to file a W-9, but I don't know what numbers they're sending to the IRS.
Right.
And if you should disagree with them.
And if I should disagree with them.
Right.
Or whether they think I'm a U.S. citizen, but I've renounced.
Right.
And so I want our government here in Australia to notify people that their data has been sent to the IRS.
Mm-hmm. It seems like it could be a simple thing added to this process.
I think that's actually a really simple thing to add. Yeah. And I think that if I get enough people to write their MPs, that's something that we might actually be able to get happening. Because there's a lot of uncertainty out there. People who, I know I signed a W-9, but I have no clue whether what I put on my FBAR or 8938 is going to come anywhere near what the bank's already sent the IRS. And they're not the same number because they're measured at different times and et cetera. But, if the bank's saying that I've got $4 million and I'm saying I've got $2 million, then there's a problem, right?
Oh, yes.
And if the bank's wrong because they've got the registration on the account wrong or whatever, I don't have a chance to.
Right. And by the time that the ball is rolling, and that's the problem is once an audit is going, someone has invested time into it, and now you're going to have an uphill fight, as opposed to if you were able just to, hey, here's something incorrect, just fix it. Exactly. It's much simpler. And then also from the tax from the IRS's standpoint, it's a much better use of resources. Why go after and audit someone where maybe there really isn't a reason to?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's one of my quick wins that we have listed.
That'd be great.
That would be great.
Yeah, we look forward to that.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So we really encourage people to go to fixthetaxtreaty.org. They can email you, Karen, like you said. Join the Facebook group. There's going to be a lot of updated information. That's a nice way to stay on top of stuff. We're going to link to you from IRSMedic.com. We'll make sure to share this video and the podcast with everyone and anyone, because like I said, I think the work you're doing is really phenomenal.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Karen. Well, thank you again for joining us from Australia. I hope you have a good breakfast. Eat our dinner.
Yeah.
And we look forward to, talking with you more in the future. So thanks for joining us here on Parental
Thanks very
Advisory.
much.
Thanks for joining Parental Advisory, hosted by Anthony Parent, produced by Claudine Gindel, that's me, and engineered by Chris Chen. For more podcasts, visit our website at parentaladvisoryshow.com, and you can like us on Facebook to submit story ideas. We'd like to thank our sponsors, IRSMedic, the law offices of Parent and Parent, LLP, real tax attorneys for tough tax problems.